My name is Irina Gurevych, and I will talk about word sense alignment of lexical semantic resources. So, as all of you know, word sense ambiguity is one of the most difficult problems in natural language processing, and some of you already inquired about the title of the talk. So, programming language in Ireland is a sort of wordplay. It's about the ambiguous word Java, which has different meanings, and it has something to do with the topic of my talk. This is joint work with students in the Ubiquitous Knowledge Processing Lab of the Computer Science Department at the Technical University of Darmstadt, whose names are listed here. So they contributed to this project in different ways. In my talk, I will first motivate the task of word sense alignment in lexical semantic resources, and then I will introduce some algorithms for finding similar or equivalent word senses. Some of those algorithms are based on text similarity of glosses, and some other new algorithms are based on the graph structure of lexical semantic resources. And then I will talk about some work we have done in order to combine different sources of information by joint modeling of features using text similarity and graph-based approaches in a joint framework. And I will then introduce our large-scale sense-aligned lexical semantic resource called UBI, developed over several years in our lab and covering about 10 lexical semantic resources for English and German. And I will conclude by giving an outlook and introducing some recent applications of this large-scale sense-aligned lexical semantic resource. Lexical semantic resources are an important block of natural language processing systems, and the work on lexical semantic resources has been done over many years. I'm pretty sure that everyone in this audience is familiar with WordNet, and there are similar resources for the Russian language, as far as I know. And of course, there is also a WordNet for the German language called Germanet, but there are some other resources encoding semantic roles and semantic frames, like FrameNet for English, information about predicates and argument, which is represented in VerbNet. And over the past years, there has been increasing interest in collaboratively constructed resources on the web and analyzing the knowledge in such resources like Wikipedia, Wiktionary, or OmegaWiki, and making this knowledge usable for language processing applications, for example, by means of extracting synonyms from such resources. And a question that everyone has who has to solve a specific problem in a given domain is which lexical resource to choose for their specific application. This is not a trivial question, since the resources are quite different. They are different in the first place in the coverage of words represented in individual resources, and also in the coverage of word senses. They also represent different types of information. For example, Wikipedia represents many nouns of encyclopedic interest because this is an electronic encyclopedia. And some other resources like FrameNet, for example, for English, represent linguistic knowledge. Also, there are differences regarding the focus of such resources. Some of them put focus on syntactic information, other resources put focus on semantic knowledge. So we believe that a better solution would not to make a decision for a specific resource in a given task and application domain, but to integrate such resources in a large-scale resource aligned at the level of word senses in order to be able to use such resources simultaneously. So to speak, to orchestrate the resources in a joint framework. So what we want to do is we want to combine multiple resources and benefit from all their knowledge. In the beginning of this work, we have done a study on the overlap of lexical entries in 3 popular English-based lexical semantic resources, such as Roget's Thesaurus, WordNet, and the English Wiktionary. Quite surprisingly, we found that the overlap of terms in these 3 very popular resources is very, very low. As you can see in this diagram, we only have 28,000 terms which are covered in all 3 resources. And we expected actually to be the overlap of vocabulary much larger. But this is an important finding, that it confirms our intuition that combining resources is very promising to make them more useful for natural language processing. We also found that they not only have quite small overlap, but the terms represented in different resources belong to different domains. And this is due to the way of construction of such resources. Wiktionary is collaboratively constructed by users on the web, and this way it encodes many terms of slang, dialect, natural sciences, computer science, new terms, and so on. And WordNet, on the other hand, has many named entities and many terms from the domain of social sciences and humanities, as well as biology terms, because those were imported in WordNet at the time of its construction. Integrating the resources, I'm sorry, I lost. Okay, this slide. Okay, so integrating the resources at the word sense level is called the task of word sense alignment. And here you can see an example what it looks like in practice. So we have 3 different lexical semantic resources represented here: Wiktionary, WordNet, and OmegaWiki. Wiktionary and OmegaWiki are freely available resources on the web, and OmegaWiki covers multiple languages. So its main concept of representation are multilingual synsets. So we have, for example, the English term to think and its correspondence in the German language singen. Now, if we look at the word senses represented in these resources, we find that in Wiktionary we have 3 senses of the verb to sing. In WordNet, there are only 2 senses, and this also illustrates the problem that the granularity of word senses is different in individual resources. So the first 2 senses of sing in Wiktionary are mapped to a single word sense, sing, in WordNet. And the task is to find the correspondences between word senses in different semantic resources. So our work is the first at large scale, but also in the previous work there have been different attempts that used different methods to approach this task. And I would like just to mention the most important of such works, for example, the Meaning Multilingual Central Repository, the Yago repository, Samlink project, Universal WordNet, Extended Word FrameNet, and BubbleNet. And our resource, which we published in 2012, is called UBI. There are many more small-scale resources, for example, in the domain of the semantic web. And such sense-linked resources were also demonstrated to be useful for a wide range of language processing tasks, because they provide increased coverage and they provide enriched sense representation. So, for example, we have seen positive results on such semantic analysis tasks like semantic parsing, semantic role labeling, word sense disambiguation, measuring verb similarity and mining translations from sense-linked resources. However, the task is not an easy one. One of the main challenges is that the resources are heterogeneous. I already talked a little bit about different coverage. So some terms are missing from the resources to be aligned. Also, there is the problem of different granularity of word senses. So you might have the situation like for the term sing, where you should map multiple word senses in a fine granular resource to one word sense in a more coarse-grained resource. And last but not least, also such resources were developed for different purposes, and this is why they might have different underlying structure. So the content integration at the level of terms is much easier because you can just compare the strings, but it's much harder if you want to find equivalent word senses that you can see in this picture, since the correspondences have to be determined on the semantic level. And in this example, you can see that not only it is difficult to find correspondences between word senses in different resources due to different sense granularity, but also there is different coverage. For example, the sense of plant as an actor in WordNet is missing from Wiktionary, and on the other hand, in Wiktionary you have a sense of plant as a play, and it is missing from WordNet. But if you can combine the both resources, then you can increase the coverage not only in terms of individual words, but also in terms of the word senses represented in the resources. So to summarize, the alignment process has at least two resources as its input, and there is an initial alignment which is usually empty. And then we can have a set of parameters and some external knowledge that we feed into this framework to perform word sense alignment. And if necessary, we can also include more than two resources in the process of aligning lexical semantic resources. So now that I generally introduced the task of word sense alignment, I'm going to speak about similarity-based algorithms to align lexical semantic resources. So in our lab, we have performed a set of experiments regarding this. And this is a graph showing individual publications. And for illustration purposes, I will use one of them. This is a paper which tackles the task of aligning word senses in Wiktionary and WordNet for increased domain coverage and has been published in 2011. So the case study, as I mentioned, is based on an expert constructed resource WordNet and on a collaboratively constructed resource Wiktionary. And our goal is to obtain a sense-aligned resource which combines two resources together and increase the coverage of the resulting resource and get richer sense representation, for example, for word sense disambiguation. As input, we start with a WordNet synset, which is a collection of synonymous word senses. And we also collect word senses from Wiktionary. And we have two steps in the alignment process. In the first step, we perform matching of lemmas to extract candidate pairs of word senses to be aligned. So this is a trivial step. It just compares the word senses on the lemma level. In the second step, our task is to disambiguate the candidates. That is, we want to delete the pairs which are not valid word sense alignment, and we want to retrieve only pairs of candidates which are valid alignments. In order to do that, we represent each word sense as a bag of words, and we construct a bag of word representation by using synonyms, glosses, and examples contained in the lexical semantic resource in order to describe a word sense. So this is done for word senses in WordNet and for word senses in Wiktionary by using special programming libraries to retrieve this information. And when we have this bag of words representation, we can apply any measure of semantic relatedness in order to derive a score of similarity. So in this particular work, we used two algorithms, the cosine similarity of these bag of words representations and a graph-based algorithm which has shown to be very successful for the task of word sense disambiguation called personalized page rank from previous work. So when we have a similarity score, we perform a machine learning process by means of 10-fold cross-validation, and we classify each pair of word senses as being a valid or not based on a learned threshold. In the community where I work, that is in computational linguistics, it's very important to formally evaluate the results of our algorithms. And since we deal with a novel task of word sense alignment for the resource pair Wiktionary and WordNet, we have no evaluation data. And for this purpose, we had to construct a data set in our own experiments. So we created a new data set with, roughly speaking, 2.5 thousand sense pairs, and we had 10 human raters to rate each pair of word senses as being the same meaning or different meaning, that is an alignment or not. Then we computed the inter-annotator agreement in order to see if our annotations are statistically reliable. And we found the agreement to be sufficiently high, so we get a kappa score of 0.7, which is quite good. And we also noticed that two annotators were quite biased, so they made many mistakes, and we removed those, and we obtain a high-quality gold standard to evaluate the quality of our algorithm. To derive a reference solution that is a gold standard from our data, we use majority vote of the 8 raters. And if there is a tie, we use an additional expert in order to make a decision. Here you can see the evaluation results. We compare the results of our algorithm with two baseline algorithms, which are quite naive. So the first one is the random baseline, just randomly assigning the decision. And the second is the most frequent sense baseline, because this one is used frequently in word sense disambiguation and is quite a strong baseline. Then we test 3 different system configurations. So the first one is the cosine similarity measure only. The second one is the page rank measure only. And the third one is a combination of both. That is, if we have a positive decision confirmed by both measures, then we classify a candidate pair to be an alignment. So the main conclusions about these experiments are the following. Our approach significantly outperforms all of our baselines, and we can see that the cosine measure has the best recall, while the personalized page rank measure has the highest precision. And if we combine both approaches, we get the highest F measure. However, we do not find any statistically significant difference between the personalized page rank measure and the combination of the cosine and personalized page rank measure. Now, we looked at the errors that we obtain in our evaluation results and tried to come up with some conclusions based on error analysis. So in our data, we have more than 100 false negatives, which means we have same meaning, but the word senses were not aligned by our algorithm. What are the main reasons for that? One of the major reasons is the so-called vocabulary gap, which is also a known problem from the information retrieval domain. That is, you have definitions which talk about the same things but use very different words. For example, good discernment as compared to ability to notice what others might miss. So these are sort of paraphrases, and our algorithms cannot detect those. Then, because we use a threshold, we also observe many cases where the senses are similar, but they do not have a score high enough to be classified as a valid alignment. And another problem that we find in our data, and this is because we also use Wiktionary that is user-generated and not a high-quality dictionary, is that the definitions are sometimes cyclic. For example, if we look at the definition of pacification, it's a cyclic definition. Instead of describing the content of this concept, it just points to another definition. And in order to resolve such a case, we would have to retrieve the definition. Another type of errors in our evaluation results are false positives. This means that the word senses have different meanings, but they have been aligned by our algorithm. And such cases are due to similar wording of definitions which refer to different concepts. For example, a computer that provides client stations, blah, 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 and another definition, any computer attached to a network. So actually, these use the same terms, but mean totally different concepts. And the algorithm cannot detect this. You need some additional domain and world knowledge. Another case is when we have words in the definitions that are highly related, but they belong to different domains. So for example, the definitions like any computer attached to a network versus any organization that provides resources and facilities for a function or event. So both describe the host, but in different domains, and the algorithm cannot differentiate this. So one of the main motivations for our work was to increase the coverage of the resource, and we performed an analysis of the terms contained in Wiktionary and WordNet together and only contained in the individual resource. And we can see, as the result of this analysis, that WordNet contains many terms related to specific domains, such as humanities, biology, or social sciences. On the other hand, we find many terms related to chemistry, IT, or physics in Wiktionary, and there are some domains where their coverage is roughly equal, for example, linguistics and medicine. Also, as I mentioned, we can enrich the sense representation for aligned word senses if we combine the information contained in different resources, and we can use this information together. So selected conclusions for this part of my talk are the following. I introduced the task of word sense alignment, and I illustrated this on aligning Wiktionary and WordNet, and we obtain a resource of increased coverage, which covers different parts of speech, not only nouns, and which covers different domains. Also, we obtain an enriched sense representation, which covers different types of information. As a result of our work, we produced a novel evaluation data set annotated by 10 human raters, and this is freely available, so anyone can use it in follow-up research. And in our later work, we have even better results on this data set by using graph-based methods, which I'm going to introduce right now. And here, again, we have a set of publications from which I choose the paper that appeared last year in the Transactions of Computational Linguistics and called Dijkstra WSA. WSA stands for Word Sense Alignment. a graph-based approach to word sense alignment. As I mentioned, one of the biggest problems we observed in our evaluation of text similarity-based approaches is that the definitions of equivalent word senses sometimes, or even quite frequently, used different words. So, for example, we have the English noun eye in the sense of discernment, that is the ability to observe something very well. And if we have a look at the definition of this word sense in our resources, that is WordNet and Wiktionary, we find two definitions that get a very low semantic relatedness score because they use different words to describe the same thing. So our idea is to use the graph topology of resources in order to perform word sense alignment. So here you can see a figure which shows three different senses of the word Java in a lexical semantic resource. And the word Java has a definition, and in this definition, well, it is said Java is a programming language, and the programming language has only one sense in the resource, that is, it is monosemous. Now, if we look at the definition of the word Ruby, we can see that it also contains the same monosemous word programming language. So our observation and our intuition is that related senses are usually located in the same region of the graph because they have connecting lexemes like programming language for Java and Ruby in this case. So the key ideas of our graph-based word sense alignment approach are the following. We represent each lexical resource as a graph, and we rely on trivial alignments as reference nodes or bridges. So the trivial alignment is the alignment I have shown for the programming language, which is a shared monosemous words in the definition of the both terms. And then we use the Dijkstra's shortest path algorithm to find alignments between word senses. This approach consists of two steps. The first step is the graph construction, and the second step is computing sense alignment. I will start with explaining the first step. We represent each lexical resource as an undirected graph with the set of nodes representing word senses or synsets each. We then construct the set of edges representing some kind of semantic similarity between a pair of nodes. Now, what can this semantic similarity be? There are different options how you can construct such a graph, and these are actually parameters of our algorithm. So there exists maybe an explicit semantic relation, for example, synonymy, that we can retrieve from the lexical semantic resource. Another type of relation that might exist is the one I used in my introductory example. This is when a lexeme occurs in the sense definition of both word senses that are compared, and this lexeme is monosemous and has a single word sense. Another possible criteria or parameter may be that two word senses that we want to compare share the same syntactic behavior and so on. So the edges might be introduced based on different criteria. Now, if we look at the graph topology of both resources, we observe a picture that looks like this. So we have the terms, Java, for example, and Java is connected to programming language, and then we also have espresso. This is connected to a different meaning of Java, and so on. And this demonstrates how the edges representing some kinds of semantic similarity between nodes are constructed. So in the second step, we use these graph representations in order to compute sense alignments after we created the trivial alignments between monosemous senses. We identify alignment candidates, for example, nodes representing the same lemma, Java and Java. And for all nodes that are not aligned, we find the shortest path to the candidate nodes in the other graph, where we use the trivial alignments as bridges between the graphs and align the node pair with the shortest path. So here again is the picture that you already know, and this is how the algorithm works. We first build a bridge between monosemous lexemes, programming language, and programming language in two resources, and Espresso, which also has a single word sense. And now we want to determine how Java in the first resource is mapped to the Java in the second resource, and we have three different paths that we can construct between both graphs. And then we compute the shortest path length, and the shortest path length here is the one that connects the programming language of Java in both resources, and it is 3. So this is resolved to be the correct alignment. Now we can parameterize this algorithm in different ways. So in some situations, we want to restrict the alignments found to only the first candidate. But as I already mentioned, in practice, we observe that one word sense can be aligned with more than one word sense in a different resource. And in such case, we can set a threshold, a restricted search depth, and we can have more than one alignment for an individual word sense. Also, there are different parameters that can be used to construct the graph. This is what I already mentioned. We can use explicit semantic relations from lexical semantic resources if they are available. We can use the monosemous linking by exploiting monosemous words in the definitions of our word senses. And also, it's very useful to get rid of highly frequent monosemous lexemes to reduce noise in our representation. And in our work, we found the words to be useful that only appear in one of 200 definitions, and we discarded all the words that appear more frequent than that. So then we also have to limit path length, because we deal with very large graphs, for example, in Wikipedia. So and this is why we get unmanageable runtime. And in our experiments, we found that the best results are obtained by setting the maximum path length to be between 5 and 8, depending on the resource pair that we want to analyze. Okay, so when we performed some experiments based on this work, we observed that the main issue with the graph-based approach is that it yields very high precision, but we also have low recall because many edges are missing in our graphs and the representation is sparse. So a very straightforward idea is to combine the text similarity and the graph-based approach, and this is done in our first experiment in the following way. We try to align word senses by using the graph-based approach first, and it is parameterized for high precision. So we have high-quality results, but we also miss many results. And then for those where we have no alignment, we apply the text similarity-based approach. And this works quite good as a fallback in order to increase the recall of our system. Again, we use some evaluation data sets in order to measure the performance of our system in different configurations. And in this experiment, we use 8 different data sets. So 6 of them are the resource pairs listed on the slide: WordNet Wikipedia, WordNet Wiktionary, FrameNet Wiktionary, WordNet Omega Wiki, and so on. And for those, we have manually constructed gold standards to evaluate the performance of the system. Also, we used 2 resources in their full size. Those are namely Germanet and Wiktionary. For those, we have a manual gold standard that our colleagues from a different university constructed in a linguistic annotation process, and it contains 45,000 word sense pairs, which is quite a big size in this area of research. And also, we exploit the German Wiktionary and Wikipedia, where users manually disambiguate the word senses and connect entries in Wiktionary, the word senses in Wiktionary, with articles in Wikipedia. So we extract that, and this way we get another large data set with 31,000 sense pairs. It is interesting to note that the data sets display different properties. So the resources like WordNet, Omega Wiki, and Wikipedia contain sense definitions and semantic relations. But for example, in Wiktionary, we have no disambiguated semantic relations, and this is why our graphs are very sparse. And in Germanet, because it's very expensive to construct manual definitions, there are almost no definitions. There is only structural information. And because we have resources with different properties, we can look at the behavior of algorithm under different conditions. So now I come to the numeric results, and first I would like to briefly tell you what you can see here. So in this particular slide, I chose 2 resource pairs. So one of them is WordNet Wiktionary, and the other one is WordNet Wikipedia, which are being aligned. And the performance of our system is measured according to 4 evaluation metrics: precision, recall, F-measure, and accuracy. And we have a set of baselines that we test here. So in the upper part of the slide, we have the random baseline. We have the baseline which only links word senses if there is exactly one in every resource, so it's a naive algorithm. Then we have another baseline which takes the first word sense, so the most frequent sense baseline. And then we have the similarity-based system, which I already described in the previous part of my talk. Then we look at different system configurations for graph construction. We have a configuration where we only use explicitly encoded semantic relations to construct the graph. Another configuration where we link monosemos lexemes, and the one where we combine both sources of information in order to construct the graph for computing the shortest path. And then in the lower part of the table, you can see the hybrid system that uses the similarity-based approach as a fallback, and this is actually what we hope to yield the best results in this experiment. As an upper bound for our evaluation, we use human interannotator agreement, and this is the last line in the table where you can see the corresponding agreement between humans, which is quite high. So we have an F measure of between 0.8 and 0.9. So now, what are the interesting observations in this table? So the first observation that we can make is that by using the hybrid approach, we gain significant improvement in the recall of our system. And this is most evident for WordNet Wiktionary, where we have very low recall of 0.27 based on the graph-based approach, but it's improved to 0.7 if we combine both approaches. And the same trend can be observed for aligning WordNet and Wikipedia. Actually, this is also propagated to the F measures, since F measure uses precision and
For combination, wait, you turned off your microphone. You turned off your microphone.
Now it's working?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. We observe the same trend that we get quite high results. So you can see that our results are quite close to the upper bound, that is human performance. But there is still some small room for improvement. And since we looked at the larger number of resource pairs, but I don't have time to explain all results in detail, I can just state at this point that this trend that we have just seen in the example pairs is observed on all other data sets. So this is a very consistent and convincing result. Okay, so to summarize this part of my talk, I introduced a graph-based algorithm that we designed called Dijkstra WSA in order to align word senses in different lexical semantic resources. And we found the results of this algorithm to be at least as good or even better as the text similarity-based approaches. However, the main problem of the graph-based approach is that it has low recall, especially for sparse graphs constructed from the English Dictionary and Omega Wiki. So the combination of Dijkstra WSA and the similarity-based backoff outperforms previous work on all data sets. So we can conclude that two approaches to compute similarity, on the one hand based on textual similarity of glosses, and on the other hand based on the structural properties of the resources as represented in their graphs, are complementary. And now the next question we have asked ourselves if it's possible to combine them even in a smarter way, and this is the work that we have published just very recently, a few weeks ago, at the Calling conference that took place in Ireland, in Dublin. And this work is about joint modeling of sense, distance, and gloss similarity for word sense alignment. So the motivation, as already mentioned, is that similarity and graph-based approaches both have their weaknesses. And we have, on the one hand, different wording of the textual definitions. On the other hand, for many resources, we have sparse or disconnected graphs. And we have already seen that the two-step hybrid approach already helped us a lot to improve the results. But this approach does not really combine the information from both approaches. And so we introduce another extension, which is to combine the results of both approaches by using machine learning. And we hope, or our hypothesis is, that we can exploit the complementary strengths of these approaches even more effectively. So we design a set of classification features. So the first type of features are based on the gloss similarity, computed by similarity-based measures. The second type of features are based on our Dijkstra WSA distances. And if no alignment target can be found, we use infinite distance. And there are other possible features that one could use, and actually we hoped that other features can go beyond our performance based on text similarity and graph properties. But unfortunately, we found that there was no significant improvement by using information such as part of speech information, sense index, translation overlap, or example sentence patterns. So if you put it in a positive way, actually we found that the information about glosses of word senses and the structure of the resources is sufficient to perform word sense alignment. We also looked at different machine learning classifiers to see if there are significant differences between naive Bayes classifier, Bayesian networks, perceptrons, support vector machines, and decision trees. And we used 10-fold cross-validation in order to evaluate our results on the same set of resource pairs which I introduced before, so 8 evaluation data sets. Let us have a look at the results. For illustration, I use the same resource pairs that you already know, WordNet Wiktionary and WordNet Wikipedia, and I use the same baselines, which are random, aligning only monosemos terms, that is, terms encoding exactly one word sense in each resource, and the most frequent sense baseline. And then here you can see the results of individual methods, like the similarity-based method, the Dijkstra WSA method, and the hybrid method, which uses a back-off architecture that I described. And now in the lowest part are the results of machine learning for different types of classifiers. So what can we see in these results is that we have general improvement in precision of our classification results. So, for example, for WordNet Wiktionary, we have an increase in precision from 0.68 to 0.82. However, this goes at the cost of recall in many cases, and we observed that the F measure improves finally after using machine learning, not for all of the data sets, but only for some of the data sets. Since I don't have time to cover all resource pairs, I would just like to summarize the results that we observe on the data sets. In particular, we have better overall results on 4 out of 8 data sets. And we asked the question why it is so. So it does not fully confirm our hypothesis. And we found that machine learning helps most for sparse and incomplete lexical semantic resources. For example, in the case of OmegaWiki or Wiktionary, whose structures are not very good, since these are user-generated dictionaries. But if the lexical semantic resources have high quality, like WordNet, we cannot gain much by machine learning as compared to our hybrid architecture, because the results are already quite high. However, if we need a system that is tuned for precision, machine learning is the right way to go, because we gain better precision on 7 of 8 of our data sets. And the most robust machine learning classifier that we had in our experiments is the Bayesian networks classifier. This is quite surprising, because it's not, the strongest machine learning approach, and we expected approaches like support vector machines to be better. But the complex classifiers like SVMs apparently have difficulties, because we have very skewed values in our features. And we tried to understand the main source of improvements in our results, and this is better classifications of the so-called borderline examples. By borderline examples, I mean cases when we have high gloss similarity and high distance, or vice versa. That is, we have contradictory input from different features. So, for example, we have something like genome, which is represented by 2 definitions: non-redundant genetic information, blah, blah, and in the context of a genetic algorithm, the information that defines an individual entity. So actually, these two word senses are different, so they should not be aligned. However, they have very similar descriptions, so they get a high text similarity-based score, but they are far apart in the graph, and because we use a machine learning classifier, we are able to recognize that, and we have no alignment in this case. Okay, so generally speaking, I talked about different approaches to word sense alignment, and the results that we finally obtained are quite close to human performance, so we are quite glad that we could address this problem in a good way. And now our overall goal was to construct a large-scale unified lexical semantic resource linked at the level of word senses. And this is also for at least two different languages, English and German. So this work has been published in several papers, and the reference paper for our large-scale resource is the one published in the EACL conference 2012. UBI, a large-scale unified lexical semantic resource based on LMF. I should mention that our goal is not only to provide a resource, but we also want to make this resource sustainable, and we want to make the resource be easily usable by different groups of users. So two main characteristics of our work to interlink individual lexical semantic resources are the word sense alignment and the standardized representation for the resulting product. So it can be easily used by other people, and the infrastructure that we build in order to use these lexical semantic resources can also be adopted and used for other languages. For example, if people want to interlink this resource with resources for Italian, Russian, or whatever other language. And as we know, the lexical resources are in heterogeneous formats. So they all use different units of representation, and it's very hard work to understand the structure and the content of each individual resource. And the characteristics of them are the complementary information types, but unfortunately different terminology. So sometimes things are called lexical units, sometimes they're called word senses, and so on. And it's quite hard to learn the terminology of each individual resource, and to make these things even worse, they use incompatible data formats. So if you want to use several resources at once, for example, in semantic parsing, you need to learn and understand each programming library for each resource. So in UBI, we standardize all these heterogeneous resources to the same format, which is based on existing standards. And we provide a unified lexicon model for that, which can be reused by other people and which is documented. And it preserves the variety of lexical information in each resource. So we do not throw anything out, but we preserve all information. And we also design our work such that it is extensible and can be extended if languages to be used in the future with this infrastructure, for example, have some features that are not covered in English and German used in our experiments. And in order to represent this set of resources in a unified way, we build upon standards in lexical semantics and text processing. In particular, we build on top of the lexical markup framework and the text encoding initiative. And then we design our model, which I'm not going to explain in detail, of course. This is just for you to get the feeling of complexity of the resulting model. And if necessary, we extend it by several types of information that are shown in color here. For example, we introduce additional classes to represent frequency of terms and word senses in corpora, if we have such information or if we compute such information from corpora. We also extend this model by representing information about semantic labels that we may obtain from external resources, and also by representing syntactic subcategorization frames. So the picture shown here enables the interoperability at the so-called syntactic level, that is at the level of the format. And to enable the interoperability at the level of word senses, we used our word sense alignment approaches that you are already familiar with. And we have over 1 million links between word senses in our resulting resource. So some sense alignments are within the language. For example, for English, we have links between WordNet and Wikipedia. Or for German, we have links between German and Wiktionary. Also, we conducted some work that I cannot describe in this talk for cross-lingual alignments and have quite good results. For example, linking the English WordNet and the German Omega Wiki. So in summary, we have quite a large set of word sense alignment integrated in UBI. And the red ones that you can see in the table are those that we created by means of our automatic methods. So those were derived automatically. The yellow ones, the alignments between WordNet and VerbNet and FrameNet and VerbNet, came from some research groups in the United States who performed this process manually. So there are groups of linguists working on providing high-quality sense alignments. And the blue ones that you can see here in the bottom of the slides are the alignments that we derived from user-generated resources on the web. As I already mentioned, in some of those resources, the word senses are disambiguated by users. For example, the word senses in Wiktionary are linked to articles in Wikipedia. Now, the resource integration workflow looks on the abstract level such that we have those different resources originally in different formats, and also we have different programming libraries in order to use them. And the resources are used both by machines for text processing, but also for linguists. So many linguists use such resources as dictionary or for some other linguistic work. So what we do is that we standardize the structure of all resources shown on the top of the slides. So they are all represented according to the LMF format. And for this representation format, we implement a Meta API, which allows you to use all of the resources through a standard interface. So you don't have to learn anything about the underlying programming interfaces, but you are able to use all of the resources with a single interface only. Some other work that we have done was to support human analysis of such resources, and we developed some tools in order to visualize the information in UBI. So here you have a search interface where you can enter a term and you can retrieve information from all lexical semantic resources contained here, and you can zoom into this information and use it in order to understand what kind of knowledge the resources represent, how much knowledge overlap they have, or which aspects are complementary. So there are many research questions that you can follow based on this tool. And specifically for word alignments, we also have another visualization interface where people can explore the results of aligning different resources. So here, for example, you can see in blue different word senses, and you can see that these word senses in WordNet are sense aligned with word senses in Wiktionary, for example. So the type of resource is color coded and the clusters of resulting sense alignments are shown. So the infrastructure that we developed for this project is based on Java, and it is available as an open source project at Google Code. And in order to get started, you have to download the database, and then you import this to a MySQL database, and you can start using the UB programming interface. However, of course, this is not, a commercial project, and it's not finished, so it's ongoing work in progress, and it needs still many methods to be added. So here are the links where you can find the information on the web. Now, I spent most of the time by talking about how to construct such resources, and a very valid question is, of course, how to use them. And I would like just to sketch some possible applications that we tried in our lab. So we looked at 3 different use cases so far. So the first one is a language-independent sense clustering approach for enhanced word sense disambiguation. The second one is about multilingual knowledge in aligned Wiktionary and Omega Wiki for translation applications. And the last one is for exploiting the information in sense-linked resources for distant supervision and training verb sense disambiguation systems. Now I have just one slide to illustrate the idea of each of these applications very briefly, and I start by the automatic verb sense labeling of corpora. The motivation for this work is that word sense disambiguation is very hard as a task, and also it's very expensive to produce sense annotated corpora. So for many languages, and German is not an exception, the sense annotated corpora for training machine learning based classifiers are missing. So our idea is to use UB in order to create so-called sense patterns automatically by using the example sentences in a set of sense-linked resources. In particular, in this work, we use example sentences from WordNet, FrameNet, VerbNet, and Wiktionary. And then we compare these sense patterns that we derive from UB with sense patterns derived from corpus instances, and we assign word senses in corpus if the similarity is above a threshold. This way we obtain an automatically labeled training corpus for word sense disambiguation, and we use this data to train a supervised system. So this is called a distant supervision approach. And on that task, we obtained significant improvement over the most frequent sense baseline for verb sense disambiguation on 2 common benchmarks for the English language. So the second use case of UB is using alignments for word sense clustering. And the motivation here is that we find, and this is also confirmed by literature in the field, that the word senses found in lexical semantic resources, especially, for example, WordNet, are too fine-grained for many applications. So for many applications, you can be quite happy if you have coarse grained word sense disambiguation, and it increases the performance of text analysis. So in order to obtain higher quality word sense inventory for word sense disambiguation, we create alignments between resources using Dijkstra WSA and allowing 1 to n alignments. That is, we can align a single word sense to multiple word senses in the second resource. And as our source resources that are fine granular, we use the WordNets for English and German, respectively. And our target word sense inventories are Wiktionary, Wikipedia, and Omega Wiki. And if two or more senses are aligned to the same sense in the other resource, we merge them into one coarse-grained word sense. And then we can rescore the results of common word sense disaggregation systems based on the clustered sense inventory. So when we conduct this process, we obtain significant improvement over random clusters of the same granularity on both German and English word sense disaggregation benchmarks. Now, the third and the last use case is using aligned resources for computer-aided translation. And as we know, the statistical machine translation systems have quite good results by now, but not for many more rare language pairs, because for those pairs, we do not have enough training data. So we want to enrich statistical machine translation models by introducing some information from multilingual sense-aligned resources. And for this, we create sense alignments between multilingual resources, for example, between German and English. And for a particular meaning, we can combine the information contained in individual resources. So to illustrate this, I have some statistics about the ambiguous word bus in Wiktionary and Omega Wiki. And we can see that, for example, in Wiktionary, we have a translation of bus for 12 languages, and we have 6 languages in Omega Wiki. And the combined representation has 16 languages. So the information is highly complementary. And this is also true for the definitions or different types of information available. Okay, I come to summarize the main messages of my talk. I started with this example: programming language is not an island. And I showed that word sense alignment is vital to increase the coverage and richness of sense representations, but also this is a hard problem if we consider a high number of very heterogeneous lexical semantic resources. There are various approaches to tackle this problem, which I described in our experimental work, and which are based on similarity-based approaches, graph-based approaches, and combined approaches, both by means of back-off and by means of machine learning. And we observed that machine learning shows the most robust results. And we also could see that the performance depends on the resource pair under investigation. So we have to look at the properties of each resource pair, such as, for example, sparsity of the resulting or underlying graph representation, availability of clauses, and so on. So this is very particular to each resource and has to be considered while designing the system architecture. And also, in our ongoing work, we could use the sense-aligned resource in order to demonstrate the improvements in performance of a range of various natural language processing tasks, such as verb sense disambiguation, coarse-grained WSD, and computer-aided translation. Now, some ongoing work and future work can be designed along different lines. So, of course, we can further improve the linked lexical resource by including other languages, and also in future work we want to strongly consider cross-lingual alignment to support various kinds of knowledge projection between different languages, and also support poor resource languages by exploiting the information across languages. And we think that the results for the word sense alignment are quite good, but still it's possible to improve upon that by investigating more elaborate similarity measures for glosses, or by using different graph algorithms in order to better express similarity. We only used the shortest path algorithm, but there are other things one could use in this place. And also what one could do is to improve the alignment by exploiting the information in several resources simultaneously, the so-called task of N-way alignment. Last but not least, there is a lot to do now that we have this resource in order to see how we can integrate it in a wide variety of natural language processing tasks. So right now we work on integrating the information from linked lexical resources in a deep learning architecture. So I think many of you might know what deep learning is. So it's a new trend in language processing, and it's built on top of neural networks and shows very good performance. I think we have already seen this in a talk today. So we think this is a very promising direction. Then the distance supervision framework that has shown very good results for verb sense disambiguation is now used to implement semantic role labeling for the German language, where we lack training data and we need automatically constructed training data quite badly. And also we, of course, extend our research on word sense disambiguation and lexical substitution for German using the knowledge from UB. That's all. Thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to your questions.
У нас есть время для вопросов. Кто хотел бы задать?
Thank you. It's a very interesting presentation. So far you was working on, you was trying to link bridge different existing resources, right? But then it is possible that still not all senses, not all words are present in these resources, right? So another direction in lexical semantics is word sense induction, word sense discovery. So, and then consequent alignment of these newly discovered terms, either mapping them to existing terms, so probably discarding them, or discovering new concepts. So whether you think this is a prominent direction of future research?
I think this is an excellent idea. So we also think that the next step will be to combine high-quality knowledge in our resource with corpus-based resources, which are not of that high quality, but they complement our resource on one hand. And on the other hand, we can also combine the lexical semantic information with large-scale world knowledge. So there are different large-scale projects building knowledge bases, and these... Right, exactly. So on the one hand, this can be connected to large-scale knowledge bases, and on the other hand, with knowledge derived from raw corpora. We actually did some experiments on word sense induction, but the results are kind of really bad, frankly speaking. So I think that it needs, further research. Thank you.
Hello. My name is Evgeny. Thanks for that very interesting report. I have a question regarding the machine learning. So you said that you tried several techniques to improve the results, and you mentioned that the support vector machine wasn't quite good for this. And my question is, how many kernels have you tried? Because sometimes using some non-linear kernel could improve the results, much.
We did not try that, frankly speaking. So we did not put too much work in configuring that properly. But I agree, if we had done that, so we might get better results. We were just happy with the results we had. So I think that you do not get large improvement just by tuning. So I had the feeling, that's what you can get out of it. And you either need more training data or you need some, something fundamentally new. But this is a good idea, so one has to try it, since this is an empirical field of research, so this is just what I think, but maybe the reality is
Yeah,
like you say.
It would be interesting to see,
Yeah.
because from my own experience, I had really outstanding results when just tweaking the kernels in the basic SVM.
Okay.
So
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Have you considered to drawing links from WordNet and so forth to semantic databases like Google Knowledge Graph or Freebase or
So we are considering
Wikidata?
to do that. So this is what I answered to the previous question. So we have not done so yet. But I mean, it's not, I think it's not very hard. So we have not done that. And, you know, you see the difficulties when you are in the process already. But because we have WordNet, unique identifier, so it's kind of trivial link, more or less, at least for, for Wikipedia information, not WordNet information, you know. But I have no practical results on that, so this is what we plan to do in future in order to, you know, have more world and domain knowledge that is required for many deep tasks in semantic tasks in text analysis. Thank you.
Could you please tell how do you deal with the highly dynamic nature of the resources like Wikipedia, Wiktionary, and even Omega Wiki? They evolve in the real time, so even now they are richer than at the time that you analyzed them.
Yes, you are
Thank you.
completely right. So we have software tools that we can use in order to, you know, get a new version of the resource. But this is not done on a continuous basis. You know, we can just run the tool once, say in 3 months or so, and then we have a larger database. This is, of course, an issue. And one could design a much more intelligent approach how to update the information continuously. On the other hand, I should mention that we have run some experiments using different versions of resources, and we found in our experiments that latest versions of resources not always yield the best results. So more data is not always better data, because if you have a larger knowledge base, sometimes it gets too noisy. You know, you have too many word senses, for example, and for some applications it's not very good. So actually I don't know the answer to the question which sizes or, you know, how to make a really very good configured resource. So it's an open research issue. I don't know. But for the current state of things, just to give a concrete answer to your question, the software for producing a new version is free, so it's open source, and we can run it every now and then. You're welcome.
I have a question. When I have such a big amount of data, can you not only merge it, but maybe produce some additional value? I mean, to extract new relations between meanings and new relations between concepts, maybe.
Yes, so that's another possible line of future research. So there are many issues that open up, and we were not able to address all of them. But we had a project where we used the synonymy relation in a pair of resources in order to enhance the other resources, so this information can be propagated. In such experiments, you always have to keep in mind that there is certain noise, you know, because the alignments are quite good but not perfect. So sometimes you have errors and they are propagated. And this is why in future work we also plan to encode confidence values of the alignments, so the user can decide at which level of confidence the information should be discovered, depending on, you know, the level of quality you want to get. But I think there's much more work that could be done in that direction based on this project. Thank you.
Еще вопросы?